Hello and welcome to Trailblazers. I'm your host, Jonathan Babler. Trailblazers is a series where we hear the stories from people who have decided to take a new path in life so that we can learn from their experience on how we might also forge that new path. I'm very excited to have a very special guest with us on this very first episode, my very good friend, Dr. Jen Riday.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. Feel honored to be here.
I'm super glad that you decided to be here and be my first guest. I want to have you take a minute just to introduce yourself, kind of tell everybody who you are and the path that you're on right now.
Okay, I'm Dr. Jen Riday. As you said, I'm a mom of 6. I live outside of Madison, Wisconsin. And about 7-ish years ago, I decided to leave my stay-at-home mom world and start a podcast called Vibrant Happy Women. And I also have now a membership, the Vibrant Happy Women Club, and I teach a coach certification so that people can kind of find their path and make a difference in that kind of a way. So that's me. In my free time, I love yoga and hiking.
That's awesome. And that's a lot. At the end, I'm going to leave some information down in the description. So if people want to check out all of the different things that you do, you've had a really interesting path and you're in a really good place. You know, I've heard you say right now, but I want to take a step back and have you kind of explain where you were and at what point or what it looked like when you decided, you know what, I'm going to go this other path.
Okay, so after grad school, after my PhD, I chose not to continue in the world of academia. I saw a lot of politics there, and I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I already had 2 kids at the time. And so my husband got a job in Madison, Wisconsin. We moved and I settled in and had 6 kids eventually. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I was trying to do it perfectly. So being the perfect mom, throwing birthday parties that looked amazing. I would bake bread every week. I was going until I completely burned myself out. In between all of those kids, I actually had some miscarriages as well. And on one particular Christmas, lo and behold, another miscarriage. I think this was after my 5th child. And my husband and I woke up and I said, I have to go to the ER, which was an hour away from where we were staying at my parents'. And we drove. Well, before we left, I could barely hold up my head. And I said to him, could you change Jane's diaper? She was going to go with us. She was pretty young. She was less than a year old and wasn't really great with even my parents. So we were going to bring her along and he wouldn't. He was in full on panic mode. My husband is also probably on the autism spectrum, not diagnosed, but I see a lot of things. He's super smart. But when his patterns change, he can get really stressed out. So we took Jane. I changed the diaper. I'm having the miscarriage. And we went. Well, we had a knockdown, drag out fight that entire 1-hour drive to the hospital. And I couldn't think anything except what kind of a monster talks like this to a woman having a miscarriage. And he was thinking, he told me later, what kind of a woman who's having a miscarriage has the energy to be this mad about a dirty diaper? So long story short, I walked into the ER alone. He stayed in the car with our baby and got my IV, handled all the things. And later that day, we were driving back to my parents. And the whole thing was so traumatic and shocking that it had all gone down like that, that I just said to myself in my mind, gosh, I can't feel like this anymore. I've been exhausted. I don't feel seen or heard. I am giving everything for everyone else. I'm going to be happy now, no matter what. I just vowed that in the car that day. And I feel like that trauma moment and then that personal vow to start pursuing my own happiness was kind of the start of everything. I can go further, but I feel like that's an important point to bring out, that sometimes our struggles and our traumas and our trials become a turning point or a pivot point. So
yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that awareness. I think that's an important part of everybody's story. Especially people that are wanting to take a new path in life, is that first piece of awareness that's something about what's going on currently is not serving me. And I feel like that seems like it's a really simple thing and should be really easy to notice. But at the same time, life is, constantly busy, and that's not always top of your mind. So certainly, traumatic experiences like you had can bring that forth. I'm wondering if through your work with your coaching and talking to just the thousands of people that you've talked with, if you have any tips for anybody that maybe that awareness is kind of bubbling underneath the surface and it hasn't really come up. Maybe the only thing that they can say is, you know what, I'm just like, this just doesn't feel right. It feels kind of gross.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you said this. So many people start to feel resentful or frustrated, and they don't really know what to do about it. I want everyone to know that frustration and resentment are a signal from your brain trying to get your attention that you need to change something in your life. So if you think about frustration with your kids throwing their backpacks on the floor, well, that resentment, frustration are a signal you need to have hooks, or you need to tell them to hang up their backpacks. It's what you're going to do. So when you're feeling it towards a huge situation in your life, like for me, being a stay-at-home mom, you start to say, okay, I'm going to change something. I don't know what I'm going to change, but I'm not going to sacrifice my happiness. That was my first boundary. And from then on, I started going to yoga class. I didn't ask my husband. I said, I'll be gone these nights and you'll be on your own. And he was like, cool, she's finally going to be happy. I support you. I went to yoga. I would go out with my friends. I just started prioritizing my happiness. And that was my first boundary. And that was really the gate that opened the path to blazing a new trail, was deciding my happiness had value and setting up boundaries to go after it. I'm not going to feel resentful and frustrated all the time with this situation. So that's my tip. Yeah.
That's a really great story and a point for awareness. And I guess I'm also wondering, so maybe we've gotten to the point where we have the awareness that, you know what, this just isn't right. This just doesn't feel good anymore. But then there's that next step of like, what do I want it to look like? And that can be a real stumbling block and really just paralyzing for many people. I've heard you've had a really good podcast. It's episode 316. I'll leave some information in the description of how that building more and more awareness of what you want that path to look like. But for somebody that doesn't have a lot of clarity, the only thing that they do know is, I just don't want to do this anymore. Do you have any thoughts or tips, or maybe just share some of the things that worked for you on how you start even exploring? Because that can be such a huge undertaking to start imagining life in a new way that it can become overwhelming and just stop people dead in the tracks.
Yes, I would have, I have two kind of tips. The first one is to create moments in your life where you can be intuitive. By intuitive, I mean connection to your higher self, connection to God or the universe or the bigger picture, whatever that means to you. And then the second is to journal during those intuitive moments. So for me, I knew I wanted to be happy. I started going to the yoga. I had another child, done with the children and miscarriages. My youngest daughter, Cora, was about approaching a year when I started to feel an urge to think about what's next. What's my big girl job going to be? What's my post having kids life going to be? And I asked that question to myself when I was on walks, while I was doing dishes. I just asked it a lot. I asked that question in prayer. I asked that question when I meditated, when I journaled. I just kind of questioned, and until one day I was in a yoga class in Shavasana pose, which is a relaxation pose at the end where you're lying on your back and you're very quiet and still, and all the good endorphins from your yoga class are flowing through your body. And I happened to ask the question again, kind of in a prayer type of way. What's next for me? What should I do? What's my big girl job? For some reason, in that quiet space that day, I kind of had a thought pop in my head, which was, you need to become a coach. And I thought, oh, cool. So I went home. I'd been wanting a change for a while, and I Googled what it means to even be a coach. I found a coach certification, and 6 months later, I started. And that was a big leap, but I was ready, and I'd asked enough times. And for those who do have a faith, some people say, well, God never answers me, or the universe never tells me what to do. Well, sometimes we just have to prove we really want this thing, and we're focused on it, and we're going to take action. And I feel like when we're ready to take an action, then often the answer comes. And I did. I took an action of getting certified, started my podcast, Vibrant Happy Women, shortly after that, and built a kind of a tribe of amazing women who also want to grow, who also want to prioritize their happiness. So it's really worked out, creating the space to be intuitive and kind of journaling and reflecting to see what's going on in my head.
That's awesome. I want to talk a little bit more about intuition, because I also think that that's a really strong part of figuring out what that path looks like and then taking those steps, because along the way there are so many choices and options that you can easily get derailed. So intuition is really something that can guide us. And intuition is probably one of those words that everybody has heard, but maybe a lot of people don't understand exactly what it is. And then also learning to A, hear yourself, but B, trust yourself. And I know that you mentioned journaling as a big part of that. Getting those thoughts out of your head onto paper. So really you can start to read yourself and learn yourself. And I wonder if there were some other tips or suggestions that you have for somebody that's maybe never taken on that practice of intuition and kind of at that starter level.
Yeah. So for some people, intuition is God, but I think it doesn't have to be just that definition. Intuition can be known as gut instinct, a feeling, spirit, source, the universe, collective consciousness, your higher self. It's simply a heart wisdom. You know, a lot of people don't realize we have a heart brain. There's a ganglia, a collection of neurons that are part of the heart that are responsible for a lot of fast decision makings, you know, in your body before the brain even has the brain has a chance to respond. So for me, just putting my hands on my heart and taking a deep breath is a connection to that intuitive feeling. And that's an easy way to get started to identify it, is closing the eyes, hands on the heart, and taking a deep breath. You center into your heart instead of being in your head where that monkey mind is constantly chattering. And there's a wisdom right here. And if you keep your hands on your heart and just ask yourself questions in this intuitive space, you'll often have thoughts pop into your head that just feel solid, grounded, earthy. I always like to say, if it feels easy or expansive or light or happy or high vibe, that's a yes, go in this direction. If it feels heavy and dark and contracted, that's a no. Now, here's where it can get tricky. Some people think that when you feel fear, that is a no, but that's not the case. Fear mingled with excitement is a yes. That fear response is your body preparing to do something it's never done before. And in my experience, all the really good, juicy things are on the other side of fear. Like you, John, starting this really awesome interview series. I'm sure that was scary, but all the cool things, all the cool people you're going to meet are on the other side of fear. So if it feels expansive, even if you get the butterflies, exciting, high vibe, that's yes. If it's contracted, dark, heavy, it's probably a no. And so just keep steering yourself in the direction of the sun, like a sunflower. Light, open, expansive is where we're headed. And then you know you're on the right track.
That's awesome. I think it's important to tell people too that intuition, it's not just something that some people have and some people don't. It's not something that people are just born with. It's really a process and a growth experience and learning and listening to yourself. And I think often as you become more and more intuitive, you can be able to look back in the past and be like, oh, I totally knew that. And I missed those signals. And I think that's part of developing that intuition.
I agree.
You were
And
talking.
I'll
Okay.
add one thing. That intuitive piece to become a coach and to start my business has been an essential piece of continuing, because I feel a sense of calling from God or the universe to do what I'm doing. And without that sense of calling, there are many times I might have just chosen the easier path, the thing that's less scary, and spent more time on Netflix or whatever else. But because I know without a doubt that I had that experience that felt very heart-centered and grounded and connected, and that I should become a coach, well, I have a calling or a work to do to help other women to find happiness and find their purpose. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I think that just made me think of one more thing about intuition too, is I think sometimes we get in this misconception that intuition, when you're able to, whether it's hear from God or the universe, or just really even hear from your inner self and be able to trust that there are going to be just these unmistakable signs and angels in front of you, or this big blaring, pointy sign. And it's not always like that. There's a lot of nuance to that. So
Yeah,
I'm glad that you brought that up, that it's also a continuation sort of thing to help not only get you on the right track, but also help keep you on the right track. And the more you practice that, the more of a closer relationship you have with that intuition to just naturally guide you. And it becomes just more of a natural process rather than a stressful.
Yeah. And, it doesn't even have to be a message from God or something big for you. It can be just, if you do what makes you happy, you're going to head in the right direction. That lightness, that expansiveness, that joy, that's also a good signpost of where to go. It doesn't have to be big.
I like that. One of the things you were talking about previously, though, was kind of the opposite of that, of fear, and the fear not mixed with the excitement, the fear that's more contractive. And obviously, that's a large part of this experience of taking a new path for many, many people. So I wondered if you would take just a minute and kind of talk about, in those early days when you were deciding, I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to go down this other path. And in actuality, in many ways, I'm going to become a new person. So what were some of those fears and some of that limiting self-talk that you had experience with? And then any ideas that you have about how to successfully overcome that?
Oh my goodness. My first, I haven't reflected on this until just now, but my first big fear was that why would anyone want me to help them when I don't have my life together? We have this and this problem at home. We have these mental health challenges with their kids. Why would anyone want to hear from me? But I luckily listened to other experts, and they assured me that when you come from your flawed, vulnerable, authentic self, that's when people connect with you most. Connection is built on vulnerability and humanity and not perfection. So that helped to recognize I'm helping someone by sharing my story of what whatever mess I might have turned into a success, I can help someone. Then a couple of more points I learned along the way. One I said before, which is all good things are on the other side of fear. So now when I'm making decisions, I know the most important thing for me to do at any given time is the thing I'm so most scared of. So often try to prioritize the scariest thing first. Some people call that eating the frog. Eat the frog first. Another one I heard within the realm of marketing, which is a good marketer repels 90% of the people to attract their 10. When I realized I didn't need to make everyone happy, that 90% of the people I know in my life would be repulsed by what I talk about on my podcast. And that would allow me to attract the 10% that are meant to be in my circle. People I love, people who love me, we connect, we're like-minded, we're heart-centered. Then I was like, cool, go ahead, be offended. It's okay. My mom might not like my podcast. My husband certainly does not like my podcast because he doesn't like self-help. He's not in my 10%, my little tribe, so to speak. We all have people we're meant to serve and interact with and help. And if it's okay to repel 90%, that can help. Final thought is a quote I use often. It's by Wayne Dyer. And he said, and I say it every day, what other people think of me is none of my business. I'll say it one more time. Whatever people think of you is none of your business. Just repeat it, remember it, believe it. And I do. That's fine. You're not my people if they don't like it.
Yeah, that is really awesome. I talk a lot about not owning things or trying to own things that don't belong to you. And that is exactly a piece of that, is not owning the actions, the words, the thoughts, the beliefs of other people. You had talked a little bit about the tribe that you built. And I think one thing that can help people build a new path is building your own community of people that are kind of like-minded, supportive. And that can be a bit of a stumbling block for people as well. If you're going to go a different path, many times that means you have to become a different person. And many times that means that the relationships that you have right now, kind of default in life, may not really be supporting that path, and there may need to be some changes. And I wondered if you had any stories about what that looked like in your life, without going into great detail about people specifically, but how, if you encountered that and what that felt like and what you did to kind of accept that and choose that was something that was part of this process.
So my first step in that was just offering my story and what I'd learned to help others. I didn't know how great people could be. I'd never brushed elbows with the type of women I've met. So I think the first step was just trying to help and starting my podcast and doing something scary and seeing where it goes. Well, one of my first things I did with my business as a coach and podcaster was to host a retreat in Florida. 6 women signed up, and that was great. That was enough. I was scared, but I was taking a leap, right? All good things are on the other side of fear. And so that first night where we were meeting for the first dinner, I was scared, and they later told me they were scared. One of the girls named Beth said, I was so scared, Jen, because I was going to be eating dinner with a celebrity, which was supposed to be me. And they didn't know on the other side of that, I was so scared. What would they think of me? I'm supposed to be some famous podcaster, but I'm just a normal person. What are they going to think? Well, within like 10 minutes of sitting down together, we all felt such a rapport. And I was thinking in my mind, oh my gosh, these are like the women I would be best friends with. Where have they been all my life? And then I started to gain a glimpse of how amazing people could be. We just had to have somehow a forum where we could all find each other. And I think taking action where you put yourself in situations with different types of people, you'll start to feel a magnetism or an attraction to the people that are more like you. And slowly the ones that maybe don't resonate as much on your frequency or how you like to think or live or whatever will fall away. It doesn't have to be cut and dry. I don't remember consciously saying, okay, I take that back. I do remember thinking the people from my hometown will think this is really weird that I'm a podcaster.
I'm from your hometown, so I don't think it's weird.
I think people are most nervous when their family of origin or the people that knew them as a child will say, "What? You're totally stepping out of the box. What are you doing? This isn't what people from our family or our hometown do. What are you doing?" Yeah. But just having the courage to go for it and trust, you'll find the most amazing people. So yeah.
Yeah, I like too that you said that it doesn't need to be like a clean cut thing, because I have seen people do that before where they're like, I'm doing this now. These people don't fit into that. And so it's going to be a clean break. And, I'm not here to say whether one is wrong or right, but I think you're absolutely right that when you start going off in your own path, the energy that you're sending out there is going to attract those people that are in your natural community, and each of us only has a limited amount of time, resources, and energy. And so you're going to spend more and more time with your community, and then that will just kind of naturally, probably people will kind of fall away. And I think that that's an important thing to remember too, because it's keeping the energy in your new path light, rather than starting it off with some sort of, more of a negative axe chop. So
yeah, and anyone who thinks it's crazy what you're doing, I don't think you want a lot of influence from them. You need to surround yourself with cheerleaders and positivity. And for that reason, it may be helpful to cut ties with some people if they're totally negative about what you want to try.
right. So you've kind of talked a little bit about where you are at, where you started this journey that continues to unfold for you. And I wanted to know what it means to you today, looking back and knowing that you took this risk on yourself and that you went out into a new direction. So just kind of brag on yourself and tell, how that was rewarding. I guess what I'm trying to get from this is so people can hear that, yeah, there are some pieces of going on to a new path that are kind of scary, that can keep us contracted, and certainly some things that we can think that we need to fear, but the prize itself is just, hard to put in words. So now I'm going to ask you to try to put it into words.
Sure. The before and after. Before starting this path, I put everyone else's happiness ahead of my own. I was a pretty miserable person because I believe I wasn't using a talent or a gift that I'd been given. I think when we start to feel dissatisfied with our lives, it's a sign that, that inner GPS is whispering, make a shift, because each of us, because of our experiences, have lives we're meant to touch in some way. Maybe it's through creating a CSA agriculture thing or planting a forest. Maybe it's through, starting a new newspaper. It can be anything, but we all have these experiences and gifts in our genetics and from our experiences that enable us to make a difference. And often when we feel empty, it means we're not doing that, or we're not fully fulfilling that. So following that, I took this leap, and not many other moms, stay-at-home moms, were starting podcasts. So it was bold, right? But what came of it? Well, I have amazing friends, and we often all say, wow, we're so grateful we met. And locally, not a lot of them are local. It's like the cream of the crop that were perfect for me, picked out from all over the US or the world even. People I love, and I see them every year at our Vibrant Happy Women retreat in Florida, and I adore them. So my friends, my connections. Another thing is our family has interesting mental health challenges. We have 6 kids. My husband comes from an interesting background. Becoming a coach gave me the tools that were ready for me right at the time I needed them most. I was so grateful I listened to that whispering voice to become a coach, because I knew how to ask my kids questions. I knew how to help them process their emotions. I knew how to set up boundaries when I needed them to protect and preserve my energy. My kids now and my husband now, it's like they live with a therapist. It's just as powerful because they know what a boundary is. They know how to process feelings. I once saw my 13-year-old daughter at the time on the phone with a friend, asking her, if that sadness was a color, what color would it be? And I thought, wow, she has been really listening. And so it's fantastic to see a family like ours that needs extra skills for dealing with mental health issues, having the tools just because I listened to that feeling to take that leap, which was scary. So yeah, my boundaries, obviously finances. I love being able to support myself, having income to do the things I want, being my own boss, not having to answer to anyone else, which is super fun for me because I don't like answering to other people. So those are some of the big ones. I'll add one more thing, which is who I am. Every single day, having to put myself out there to get up and record a podcast or go teach a class, which I love. But the act of constantly needing to tell myself I'm good enough for it, I'm good enough to do this, I have something to offer, it's changing the neural pathways in my brain. The self-talk, the positivity required to be a trailblazer changes you at the neurological level, changes how your brain thinks. And then you can show up with greater energy and positivity and have a bigger impact. You change as a person energetically. You kind of radiate a light by constantly showing up for other people. And so you up level yourself. So those would be the big changes, I think.
That is awesome. Yeah, I think it would be easy to say that your intuition has been transformative to your life. And I feel like that's something that I want people to hear is people can do this. It's not just there's something special about you or about this person, that we all have that ability to connect with ourselves, become super authentic, and just go on our new path, and it really will transform your life. Now, having said that, there's one more thing that I would like for you to talk about, because you talk so well about this, and it's that 50-50 principle. Because what I don't want is for people to hear these stories of people that have been successful in their path, and then making it seem like, oh yeah, all I had to do one day is just decide I'm gonna make a change, and then life has just unfolded and fallen into my lap, and blah blah blah, and daisies and roses every day. And I think it is important to stay realistic, and one of those realistic things that you talk so well about is the principle that life is 50-50. So I'll let you take that.
This is great. I think it's important because I am painting the rosiest side of this. So I'll give you the reality side. First of all, this idea of life being 50-50 is that many of us, I would say most of us, falsely believe that life should be 90% happy. And when we hit that, with it's actually the 50%, we feel like we've been robbed because we're not happy. And we assume everyone else is happy. We see only their best sides on social media and stuff. What if we accept that life is 50% happy, 50% sad, 50% easy, 50% hard, and that it's all meant to teach, and that all of that contrast allows us to feel either of the extremes, because you can't have happy without sad or easy without hard. For me, I'm on this path, but the path is still hard. There's the uphills and the downhills. There's the rugged terrain and the prairies there's the marshy muck and the open fields, whatever. The point is, I mentioned my family has mental health struggles. I've always struggled with depression. And sometimes on my worst days, I'll say, maybe I'm too depressed. Maybe I have too many mental health problems to really be an entrepreneur like other entrepreneurs. That would be the lowest messaging that still pops into my brain nowadays. And, there's my 50% dark or heavy, and I just use my tools like my Be Her morning ritual. It's a kind of a morning routine of breathe, exercise, hydrate, embody, read something inspiring. I fill up my cup again. It's every single day doing the things that make me happy and doing the things that help me see the positive, and taking an action that maybe I don't feel like taking. Just one foot in front of another. The way you live life, always moving forward, that's what you need to do as a trailblazer as well. I think about pioneers who crossed the Intermountain West, they just had to keep walking to get to their destination. And that's true of entrepreneurship, blazing a trail, starting a service project, starting a new career, starting a family, moving, whatever trailblazing people listening want to do. It's just important to know it will be 50% hard too. And you can handle that because the hard makes you stronger, makes you appreciate the easy.
Yep. Yep. And the reward on that other side too. And I think, you're a good example of learning to harness that intuition and becoming really authentic and accepting the fact that, Life is 50-50, and there are a lot of things in life you can't control, but what you can control every day is the choices that you make. And part of that choice is framing whatever experience that you're having. And, like you said, choosing instead of wallowing in this didn't work out or this or that, that's actually a lesson. And I'll take something from that. And now I know next time I'm going to do this instead. And I love the fact that you said contrast. I'm a big believer in duality. We live in a world of duality, and it's true. You can't know one thing without knowing its opposite. There are animals that live in caves that never see sunlight, and so they can't even conceptualize light because they always have the absence of it, which is dark. So
yeah, I heard an analogy on a podcast that we're all climbing a ladder. And one side is the W's, the wins. The other side is the F's, and you've got to have both on each side. Every single F or failure you get is learning. Instead of seeing failure as the end, I failed, oh, that's it. Every little failure is something you learn from, and you can't have all those W's without all those F's on the other side. You've got to have both. And so I would tell you most successful trailblazers are just willing to have more failures than everyone else.
Yeah, I would imagine that's very true. I want to get your thoughts on one more thing. You just made me think of this concept of the corridor principle, and I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
That if you're wanting to take a new path or you're wanting something, and you imagine it as this very long corridor, and at the very end, it's so far away, you can't even see it. And that can become very paralyzing for people because normally if you can see what it is that you want, you can have enough motivation because you're looking at it that you can start taking steps forward. But if it's so far away that you can't even see what the end result's going to be, that can just make you stuck. And the corridor principle says that just taking one step forward, even if it's not that ideal step, will actually start opening more and more worlds and actually kind of help you keep flexible. And this is what I wanted to know what your thoughts were about, as far as like, if you have an ultimate goal, how concrete do you make that goal? Because the corridor principle seems to suggest that flexibility can actually help you get there sooner, because as you start taking one step down this corridor, you start realizing there's doors on each side that you couldn't have seen before because you were too far down the hallway. And each of those doors might become a new possibility or a new way to do what it is that you wanted to do. So that's always something that I've kind of wondered, and I'm not the best goal setter in the world at this point. And I do appreciate that flexibility. And I wanted to know what your thoughts were about that.
Well, this principle kind of makes me think about the law of attraction, which is that it's more important how we feel than how we actually take the action. So let's say someone has a goal to be a size 8, which I don't know, kind of maybe a shallow goal, but I'm sure people have the goal, a woman who wants to be a size 8. She can imagine and generate the feeling of being that fit, being able to hike without any hindrance because she's not carrying the extra weight. The feeling of being a size 8. She might not know the how or every step that's going to get her there. She's going to chalk up a ton of F's and W's on the way to that goal, but she can generate the feeling of having it as if it's already true. And I feel like that's really important, to decide on what you want and then feel it as if it's already there. And your brain can't really differentiate between what you imagine and what you take action on. There's been studies at Harvard, they had groups play the piano, another group imagining playing the piano. Both had the exact same neural growth in those pathways of the brain. So imagining the success of it every day, athletes do this, imagining the perfect golf swing or the perfect basketball shot. We can do that with our goals in the ways we want to change lives, imagining our what, even if we don't know the how of what might open up in that corridor.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Well, I am so glad that you joined me today and that you were the first to kick off. I feel like this was a very powerful episode. I do want to give you a chance to talk a little bit more about what you do and how people can check out more of your work and the opportunities that you present to people. So why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
Yeah, the best way is to listen to my podcast, Vibrant Happy Women. And you can find out more about my retreat and my programs at jenbriday.com.
Excellent. And for more, or if you want to hear more about Jen's story, kind of more details, what she talked about in her her path, that was episode 316. I think I listened to. That was a really good, powerful episode. So make sure to check that out. I hope that you've appreciated this and learned a little bit of something, maybe gotten up a little bit of courage to take a new step forward. Do remember to like this video, subscribe if you want to get notifications for the next time that we drop a new episode. Please click the notification bell. And until next time, I'm Jonathan Bowdler, and we'll see you later.